Good morning, Business Athlete Nation. Good day, Business Athlete Nation. You have and 2% Better Nation, Di Manuel, Keith Bilous, Matt, and Audra Karam joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Oh, where's that?
Good to see you guys. I'm back.
Matt and Audra? Well, then let's keep chatting. I'm going to push myself aside for now.
Hey, Matt, it's great to meet you. It's awesome to be back this week and to pick up on where the conversation was leading last time. And I was thinking about it because being a father of two now young adult kids.
Sure.
They'll always be my 21 now, but I would have loved to have a better understanding of how to present consequences. And I thought, why don't we just kick it off? How do you explain the concept of consequences to a child?
Sure.
And what age is the best time to start that conversation?
Oh, fair question. Sure. When everybody has a little different take on that, if you will. Some people believe that 3 years old is a little too young to start consequences, if you will. They don't understand those outcomes. And then others think you should wait till 5 or 7. And you see a lot of things. And so I think a lot of it depends on your child, particularly. Some understand and comprehend concepts earlier than others. Sometimes girls comprehend them quicker than boys. And one of the things that we've learned is if you can have an immediate consequence that is minor, if you will, right?
Mhm.
To see if they're starting to understand that. We all know you don't want to wait 24 hours before you impose a consequence, right?
Yes. Yes.
The causality in their mind, they lose what just happened, why they got in trouble, and it doesn't make sense to them. So it's important that it come quickly and right after, immediately is preferred, number one. And number two, you want to make sure that it meets the infraction, if you will, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to over punish for some minor infraction that someone's learning and doing.
Yes.
That creates a bad precedent, right?
Yeah, I think it can start really young. As we all know, natural consequences
Mhm.
is the biggest learning experience for all of us, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So when the child makes the wrong step and they fall, that's natural consequence, right? And so they
Right.
figure out, I'm not going to do that again. And I think
Right.
when we incorporate some of that stuff into their daily life, help them learn and make their own mistakes a little bit. But as they grow older, yes, how do you deal with the consequences? So I guess it's important to understand if you're dealing with a young child or if you're dealing with an elementary or an older. So that would be the bigger question.
And actually, that is I think that would be wonderful just to give us some examples here, but also to speak us about, maybe you could add some examples of
Sure.
age appropriate consequences for children. Like, just give us some examples of how this would play out for different age groups.
I'd like to start with the really young ones. As an example, when we would work with families, sometimes the younger child would come in with the mom and she might be like, oops, there we go. She might be like, Keith is moving us
There
everywhere.
we go. Sorry, just get myself sorted out here. There we go. Good. We're good. Thank you.
So it might be like a 9-month-old or something, and the mom is holding the little one. And to some people, this might seem premature, but I think it starts as soon as they're out with us in the world. And so the baby might be there slapping the mom while she's trying to talk. And it's all in good fun or whatever from the child's perspective. But I think it's important for the mom at that point to you take the hand and you put it down because that's not acceptable. And once the child, I can just at 9 months, now at 1 year, and now at 2, and it's not acceptable to be hitting anyone. And not that it's in a bad way, if they're just touching, but when they do this kind of stuff, that would be an example like, yeah, no, you just gently remove the hand and you say no. And then, okay, that message has been delivered. As they get older, it's natural consequences. And as they can accept, if I step if mom told me to put my shoes on and I step out into the rocks and I don't have the shoes on, it's going to hurt.
Yes.
So then we back up and we talk about this is an example where you would say, okay, remember we talked about putting on your shoes so your feet wouldn't get hurt. So I think always providing an explanation behind any consequence that you have, I think is really important.
That actually
Does
makes a
that
lot of
help?
sense because it's meant to teach, not to punish, right? I would think that's really the main purpose of this, right? Really to, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's always teaching moments, and I think that's why it's so important that the parents be as involved with their children as they can, because and not to say anything negative about childcare, daycares, or wherever you might send them to, but who's ever involved is if you can be a part of saying, this is what happens when you what's the word I'm looking for? When you do this is going to be what happens. And so we need to have that consequence, and just redirection, I think, is a lot of times when they're little, so they can learn.
If this, then that, right? Let me ask you this though, okay? Because that many of us parents try to co-parent our children as best we can. But what if there's differing views between the two parents on consequences and how to do? I'm going to be honest with you.
For
Okay,
sure.
my daughter's got me wrapped around my baby finger. Okay, like they got me wrapped. I'm like, I'm such a. They know they're all daddy's girls, and they can get away with pretty much anything with me eventually. And even I remember punishing them and being like, 5 minutes into this, sending them to the room. I'm like already in there saying, "Okay, you can come out." Like I'm the worst. Okay, the worst. So I'd love to hear, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, when you have differing views on how we deliver these consequences, I'll admit that's a tough one. And what might be good to do is refer, like somebody handles this. And I think Matt shared this last time, like he handles the outside stuff, or I handle schoolwork and dinner time and things that happen, or the clothes they wear, and delineate who handles what, if that's the mode you go with. But, or if someone's always the decision maker on these consequences, some families do that as well. But like for maybe your example, it would be, yeah, you maybe have to do a self check, because I would challenge you to say, is the consequence I'm like, they did something, an infraction, and you're feeling guilty about the consequence just because they're giving you weepy eyes or a little sad face. You need to back up and say, the adult in me knows, this is for you. This is helping you be more successful in life. And if you can keep maybe that channeled in your mind, or whoever struggles with giving in, it's really about the end goal. What are we trying to, what's our goal for our children? Like we had a mission for our kids: happy, healthy, self-sufficient, good people when they leave our home. And I think if you can maybe play that in your head, and you and your significant other or whoever it might be, talk about that, and have them there to remind you, is this where we really want to head? And maybe allow them to step in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, united front.
You can have it, right? One of the things that I've done sometimes is I withdraw myself. I'll say, that's something mom takes care of. What did she say? And how is that type of a thing? That way, I now can just defer to one other person. And I think helping the children draw those natural consequences, the if and then the then, because of you did this, that means this is going to happen. Sometimes children don't draw that correlation.
Right.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they're just pushing the envelope, right, to see what you do, if anything.
And they know super early who to go to when they want something.
Oh gosh, yeah. Tell me
Right.
about it.
Exactly.
And then they know the end consequence, and dad's going to deliver a tough one, or mom's going to make me do this. And yeah, they play on that, and we have to be smarter than that, and not let all those emotional decisions come into it.
Keith, how about you, buddy? Are you the disciplinarian? What?
Yeah. No, I'm ancient, so I don't say much these days. I just sit back and observe and communicate. It makes me curious about this conversation. Di, as I was thinking about our chat today with Audra and Matt, I was asking myself whether there was some generational bias on today's call, and whether this is part of a larger conversation with some different generations that we need to invite to this conversation. Because part of me wonders, so anybody who's in their 20s and 30s right now are thinking, who are these old folks talking about being parents?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Right? They're different. And Di, you're laughing, but I was reflecting upon it this morning going, there's some 20-year-old hearing right now going, who's this old guy talking? Like,
right.
We parent differently. But then I ask the opposite question of myself, which is, have we spent too much time in the last 10, 15 years teaching and not disciplining? Have we spent too much time being too soft, being too, no. If you mess up, you're going to jail. No, if you're going to die.
I used to get spanked, okay?
No, me too.
And believe me.
Yeah.
It worked like a charm, all right?
Me too.
I had a number of spatulas broken on my rear end.
Right.
But I bring it up because I read today, I read a fascinating article, which was Larry Carnahan, have to let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Oh, I see we got a conversation happening.
Well said, Larry.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a discussion happening in North America right now whether we've become too woke. And a lot of corporations are like, done with the woke. We're done with diversity, inclusion, equity, XX. Right. It goes also back to consequences and how we teach our children. It's the full circle. Right. And when there's no consequences for the most powerful leader in the world, perhaps the president, And
right?
I'm just making commentary. It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
wonder how
Agreed.
much water that the world holds right now in if then this happens.
Mhm.
If then this happens. Let's see what else Larry has to. So Larry has to say, drawing a line in the sand with your kids and sticking to whatever the consequence, you have to stick to it, Larry says. Also, having effective communication and being super aligned with your spouse have been game changers for me. Thanks for sharing that, Larry. Great topic here. Yeah, it is a great topic because it's you got to be aligned. And I know if Di and Christy are seeing this the sky through different colors, the kids are going to learn about that real quickly.
Mhm.
Or they are. And I think one of the big changes, and I think your point is well taken, the generational
Yes.
differences, if you will. When I was younger, I had chores I had to do, and I was never told why. Didn't matter. They just
Yes.
needed done.
Yes.
And I got in trouble if I didn't do them right. And of course, if I did it well, no one told me I did it well.
Yes.
You were just expected to provide that level of care or service or follow through or those type things. And I think it goes back a little bit too. In our last conversation, we had a family that had 3 children, and we had a second child that was developmentally delayed in their physical and mental development. And mom chose not to include the second child in the tasks of the home, right? She asked the older one to put dishes away, and she asked the younger one to take out the trash. But the middle one actually had nothing required of them of the household. And remember, that outcome was bad. After about 2 or 3 weeks, that second child started acting out like they never did before. And then when we did a parent conference with them at the school, we found out that the second child didn't feel included, didn't feel loved because everyone else had obligations and he didn't. And so as soon as mom gave him some tasks to do, the household actually smoothed out. Everybody was happy. And you would actually think that's the opposite, but it wasn't. He was excluded. And so some of the consequence he took out of that is he wasn't worthy and he wasn't a part of the family. And it was the exact opposite. Mom was just trying to protect him. So sometimes there in my prior life in financial world, there was a book called Unintended Consequences. And so I don't know if you guys have ever read that or not, but it was really just comparing two families. And that one was actually more looking at the financial life or health of someone. And that's what it was catering to. And it showed one person that made good decisions and throughout their lifetime and where they ended up at the end. And the other one was they made bad decisions and how they ended up. And basically they're saying in that book, which one do you want to be? And so to us, and one of the things too I want to talk about is teaching, like the headline of this episode is teaching what? Teaching consequences or teaching anything. And so what we thought we would do is there's a teaching or a retention pyramid that I thought it'd be good to use in our discussion today, just to really get people to understand better. Where this came from was my daughter is 24 and she was taking her real estate license here in the United States. And so she came to me and said, Dad, what's the best way for me to learn? Whoa. Okay.
Because he learns stuff really easy. He reads it and he learns it. And so everybody's not like that. And so she's, yeah, that's not my gift to read and learn it.
So it really made me delve into that because teaching a consequence or teaching anything, I'm thinking, okay, we've taught a lot of people, and why don't I have the answer to this for you? And so it bothered me a lot. And so one of the things that National Training Laboratories in 1964 created a pyramid, and it's just called a retention pyramid, okay? And they stack 3 learning modalities together to create a new behavior, which can be then later converted into a habit, okay? And so the first thing was 20% of that retention is actually watching it or seeing it,
somebody do it. Yeah.
do it with your own, almost like a TV series, right? And so they see it being acted out. That was 20%, where you initialize the idea or the concept. The next part, 50% to stack on the retention stack, was a discussion about it. Okay. So just like we were saying, you were saying a consequence is a teaching moment, right? In a parent's life, if you choose to use it that way. So we can talk about it, we can dialogue about it. And then the third thing in that retention pyramid was actually practice. And you took their retention up to 75% of that concept if you actually had them do it, right? And so that's the talk is, in my mind, if you're going to teach anything, if it's a consequence or any concept, make sure the children sometimes take away different concepts from a conversation than we do as adults. right?
Sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know,
So make sure
they're-
they understand. One of the phrases and he dates that back to 1965, and it's good to know, and because you referenced generational, and it's still in place today. It's a proven scientific way that children specifically learn best. And just like driving a car, you can't just sit on the sidelines and learn how to drive a car after you read the book. So it's you got to put it into play. But the consequence piece is I always live by this phrase when parents would come and ask us, how do I get them? And I'm always like, say what you mean and mean what you say. And I think if you can have that mantra in your head whenever something's coming up and you say, because we were just down at the pool the other day and there was these three little girls, cute as could be, swimming away. And this one had this, what would I say, her position is the whiner of the group. And mom, you need to be quiet. Stop. You're annoying everyone. And if you don't stop, you're going to have to get out. 30 seconds later, whine. Kid doesn't get out. She says the same thing again. You know what? You're just being too loud. You need to be quiet. People don't want to hear you whining. And we're going to have to go soon if you don't quit. Okay, it stops her for a little bit. And this kept happening for a good hour. And, and everybody in the pools, I was okay with it. But after a while, you're like, just do it the right way. Just if you're, maybe we can't, if she wasn't willing to leave, this is an interesting point. So because we dialogued about it afterwards, my daughter and son were down there with us and they're like, what about that little girl? And I said, what might have made more sense is I get it. Mom doesn't want to leave the pool, but whatever consequence she gives to that little one, hey, you're going to have to come sit with me on the side of the pool for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. That can get the message through, right?
Right.
Because we're not fun. We're not playing anymore. And mom said what she meant and she's going to follow through with it. So it's the follow through and understanding before you utter those words, we're going to leave the pool if you don't stop. Am I, as a mom, ready to leave the pool? And is that fair to everybody else in the group? No, right? Does that make sense?
Following through on what you say, we're talking consequences with myself, Di Manuel, Matt, and Audra Karam. We're going to wrap up today's episode because I think that's how you're going to, that's the actionable item. And then we're going to come back for episode. We're going to continue the conversation with Matt and Audra. I know we try to shoot for 20, 25 minutes. Audra is ending it right now, Di, which is that whole idea of if you're going to say something, parent, then you got to follow through on it. So we're gonna end this episode on this one. I invite you back to continue the conversation on teaching consequences with Di Manuel, Matt, and Audra Karam, and myself. But while we do that, if you're watching our show right now, while we're breaking, I am going to put a 20-second video up, which is showing my good friend Di Manuel walking on his arms. Hold on. There we go.
Walking on my hands. All right, there we go.
There's Di.
I'll get a better video. I'm gonna do the football field soon enough.
Look at this. 46, 47,
Awesome.
48 feet, almost to 50.
Not this one. This video is a lot shorter, but if I did the whole length of that room, it would be 50 feet. And I've been trying to do it for 2 months, and I keep falling around 47, 48. It's driving me nuts.
There you go. There you go.
That's awesome.